What's up, Ramon? What are you smoking on? Well, I guess we're supposed to give an intro first, so I'll start by saying hello. My name's Michael Bostar. I'm the Director of Strategy and Implementation at Spark. We are a vertically integrated cannabis company based in Northern California. We have retail, cultivation, manufacturing, and I'm here to talk about how we like to prioritize equity and how retailers that aren't even necessarily equity licenses can still support equity programs. And here with can I say the godfather of equity? I like to say you're the rabbi of equity, because just like a rabbi blesses kosher food, that in order for it to truly be equity, Ramon has to actually stand above it and give a small blessing. And if that doesn't happen, it doesn't get the kosher, or it doesn't get the equity stamp approval. So that's in my head kind of where I see you. So anyways, Ramon, you want to share a little who you are?
Okay, I'll start by honoring today as Indigenous Peoples Day, taking back the 528 years of destruction of Indigenous peoples on this continent. So I want to give thanks and honor the Ramon people whose land living on right now and doing business on, and want to respect that first and foremost. My name is Ramon Garcia. President of the Original Equity Group, helped co-found Sanctuary Farms, Family Farm, and Padre Mu, and now Locals Equity Distribution co-founder. And doing, creating language and advocating for people of color and communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs for almost 10 years now, making sure that communities of color and those impacted were included in the language with this section of this plant in California. So brief introduction.
Awesome. Yeah, there's so much more. I know there are so many stories and so much that you're working on. So I'm excited to talk kind of a little bit, but I want to hear some of the things you're up to and share some of the things we've done. Because obviously, Sanctuary Farms is a total crowd favorite at Spark now, which is great. It's hard. I'm only bummed because the Fire Cookies isn't available anymore, because that sold out pretty quick. But I liked introducing you and wanted to bring you on as someone we talked to because we really do. We want to make sure that equity programs are getting and equity brands are getting this opportunity. Because, like you said, especially I do think it's relevant to have this conversation on Columbus Day. Oh my God! Do you hear what I just said? In my head, I said it's because I just took the dab. No, but on Indigenous Peoples Day, which for years has been considered and we're working on the rebrand because clearly it's deeply ingrained of the way things are, and in order to do that. You really need to shift your way of thinking, and it requires this intentional impact. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. And we're trying to prioritize brands. We have Sanctuary, Gifted Doja, SF Roots. We're really trying to promote equity. So I'm curious, from your stance, what are some of the key things that you've seen that just to get right to it, like what are the best ways for dispensaries to support equity brands? I mean, put them on the shelf.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Spark. Definitely, I appreciate you guys did make a concerned and very, very intentful step forward to make sure that there was inclusivity in the brands and products that you guys represent. So I definitely appreciate that. Initially, we're 3 years into the equity program, starting, 4 years for Oakland, and Oakland started this. And so, initially, a lot of people made a lot of commitments to the equity communities, but in many cases weren't able to make those commitments because, the products and the brands weren't there. This was a struggle that we knew was going to be the case with small business. It's basically about supporting community. Ultimately, we know that it's been 50 plus years of war on drugs, and that certain communities were impacted. Excuse me, were impacted disproportionately, meaning that certain communities were the focus at the front of systemic oppressive policies, and so um, basically it's swinging that pendulum back. What did the war on drugs and what did this take from us? It took access to education. It took access to economic opportunity. It took a lot of our generational wealth and a lot of our elders and leaders, and it pushed propaganda in our communities. And so that's what we're fighting against. That's what we're fighting against when we're talking about, what can dispensaries, what can people within this industry do to support equity? Well, first they have to recognize that the whole reason that they can make money right now is because generations of Black and brown people suffered and lost their lives and their property, and small farmers who went up there and risked their lives under federal prohibition and got land took from them, that they sacrificed some real generational wealth. They sacrificed blood, sweat, and tears. In some cases, people died for this. And so, number one is just respect the sacrifices of the people that paved the way to get this. And if you do that, then you're gonna really have the intent in your heart to make sure that those businesses are represented in everything that you do. It's not about charity at all. It's about equal access. It's about giving the equal opportunity to these businesses coming out of these communities. Like, to expect them to pay $3,000 a month for, slotting fees is exactly the problem of entitlement and not understanding what the challenges are of these communities. Like,
right. And if anything, yeah, even going the opposite direction, it's just creating space and creating opportunity, like you talk about. That's the thing. I mean, we don't charge slotting fees in general, so it's not about necessarily the dollars in, but we do, we want to, I think it's important to be, I keep using the word intentional, because that's the whole way that systematic issues affect society, is that if the car's in drive, that's perpetuating it, and you can't just leave the car in drive and expect things to change, because the car in drive has created inequitable opportunities, and so that's why we try, we have we've plugged Sanctuary Farms super hard, and now it's like, it's not to the point, but that's just to say that it's like we would plug any brand that comes in. It's like but it was just a matter of choosing Sanctuary Farms, and now Sanctuary Farms is one of our better selling flower products. And it's not, I mean, I'm sure some of it is that there is, the conscientious consumer, right, who wants to support equity programs, but there's also just you're obviously biased, but I can say that Sanctuary is great flower, and so there's a great product. So I think also, I mean, can you share? Have you experienced any like stigma just surrounding that if it has the equity stamp, obviously to be proud of is what you're trying to boast, but do you run into, it's equity, so there's almost do you experience that?
Yeah, no, it was probably 1.5, close to 2 year battle to, using some pre-existing relationships that I already had to get people to just try a product, right? And just try it, compare it against the other products that they're marketing. That was the common misconception, is that equity is new, and so this is going to be a new product, and it's not going to particularly be backed by, understanding of this and quality. And I tell people it's the exact opposite. Listen, people who qualify for equity are people who've been selling this plant for years.
Yeah. Like, just because you get to wear the title of CEO of a cannabis company.
No, they have a long history of this plant. So like they have generations of experience. They understand what the consumers are looking for and want. And so in most cases, an equity product is going to be better than most of your corporate run products, because these are people coming from outside of the industry that may not fully understand the plant, so they don't understand the complexities and how to pick something quality. We've been selling out on the streets. If you know anything about California, you know, the streets are the most, like, you would think it would be easy to sell something on the streets, but these are the most like picky customers. Like, we're talking about 80 years of consumerism, and they're the most picky, right? They're going to spend their money. So they're going to pick the quality.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things is like the lack of understanding of the value of like what I consider IP of some legacy operators.
Right.
You know,
And
like,
that's why, honestly, that's why Sanctuary Farms is the way it is, because, you know, there's a lot of good growers out there, but we're working on 3 generations. We're working on some strains that we've had for 15 years. We're working on an understanding of our microclimates for the past 12, 15 years. So, like, we understand how the plant responds. We've grown it several times where we understand that that strain might want more of this or less of that. And ultimately, when you listen to the plant listens, right, gives you its best. The more you listen to it, give it what it wants, the more it gives what you want. And so when we're talking about legacy and we're talking about equity, we're talking about people that have been listening to this plant and listening to consumers for a long time and have a deep understanding of what people want and should get for the value of their money. And so again, that's why I tell people it's not charity. Like, believe me, I've had to convince stores that these products are going to increase their ROI. And then once they gave us a chance, these products end up outselling most of their other products. And so now just being able to try to build that up so there's more of these products available, so we can show people the difference between something that's been cared for and loved for and touched, as opposed to somebody who's just looking at it as a commodity.
It's got great branding and, you know, it's paid a great graphic designer or whatever. Yeah, no, I think about that a lot because, we're trying to expand our retail footprint. And with that, we're trying to bring along this ethos. And, I really do find that there is like just a lot of, with regards to just, well, what you were saying about listening, I thought was really interesting, is that there really isn't much listening. It's much more of this is what will work, as opposed to maybe this will work, and hearing that there maybe is a different lens of things we can prioritize. And maybe you don't have a crazy nice branding because you didn't spend 10 to 20 grand on a brand. You spent that money getting a good product that's available for sale.
And that's absolutely the case with Sanctuary Farms. Like, even though we've been in this for a little while, we focused on our process. We started testing our mothers 6 years ago to get rid of anything that had systemic pesticides, anything like that. Like, we were testing our soil 6, 7, 8 years ago, just preparing for this day when it would have to be regulated the way it was, and really taking a lot of pride and ownership in our process, how we do what we do, to make sure that that's something that's scalable, but ultimately will be about the quality of our product. Gary Vaynerchuk, like, if you know him, like, he did a thing up at the Emerald Cup, and for us, it was already well known. For us, it was about the quality of our product. We'll deal with the branding and all that later. Like, it took us till last year to really figure out what our logo, and it's still working out. Like, we didn't start our Instagram till last year. Like, we didn't have any branding or marketing, but what we did have is we do have, a very tight ship with our soil. We have our own soil mixtures, and it's natural living soil. We have our own compost teas. We understand our process for curing and storing and trimming, all those things that make the ultimate difference in the quality of the product that ends up to the end consumer. Were we worried about growing a whole lot of shit, making a lot of money? No, we weren't. because we wanted to make sure that our process was down first so that we could be consistent with the quality, and that's what's going to build the brand. Like the consistency, the quality. When people, if they spend $45, $55 a day, do they feel like they got their money's worth, right? And then
And if they do, keep buying it.
And then we made a very concerned effort to really kind of change some of the propaganda and some of the untruths out there. So like if you notice on our packaging, we wrote natural sun-grown flower. Now, to understand the perspective of that, we knew that when we started going into retail locations that they're going to want us to charge less per eighth for our product because it's sun-grown, because the perception out there is that sun-grown flower is less, terpy or less powerful than indoor, or, some of those things that are out there. And we wanted people to experience it and realize that that's not true. And so we specifically went out to kind of promote sun-grown and natural soil and some of these things to show people that our sun-grown flower stands up right against 90% of the ingrown flower, like
sure,
indoor
anything.
grown.
Yeah, I love that. And hey, just as a quick pause, I think your microphone is like hitting a pin. Do you have a button right here?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can take your button off or switch it. Yeah.
Switch it. Yep.
Perfect.
Gotcha.
All right. It was making a little tapping noise. Maybe it was something else, but I think that was it. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I think that was it.
Okay, so then, all right, well, cool. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is, because obviously equity licenses are coming out and they're getting issued. And something that I've noticed and what we're trying to, because, we're trying to form partnerships, with any brand partner we want. Obviously there's an intention for equity, but also with retail licenses, we're forming partnerships. And to me, it just seems that there's a lot of equity partnerships that aren't really equitable, to say to just, I guess, use a little circular word choice.
That's putting it very polite.
Yeah, and it's so it feels like almost patronizing to put it in this simple of terms, but do you find, like, it seems like almost the advice, if we're talking what can non-equity brands do to support equity brands, is just treat them like an actual partner, like a true partner. Would you say that's true? Would you say that that generally you experience relationships as equitable, or is there some sort of like we got you, sort of what's been your experience?
It's funny. There's been a little bit of both, but ultimately it kind of goes back to the impacts of the war on drugs, right? Which kept us from a lot of education and understanding. So for most equity applicants, they don't understand fully what is an equitable partnership. What does that look like, right? So if you don't understand your rights, you don't understand what the laws are and what you deserve, then you're not going to understand what an equitable partnership looks like, what a non-predatory partnership looks like. So that's what we at Original Equity Group and Equity Sessions try to do a lot, is try to give people the examples of what a good partnership looks like, so that way they're at least empowered to understand that when they're approached with something that is predatory or not right, that they'll be able to recognize that, because most of the equity partners just don't know. Like if you just came out of federal prison, you just did 10 years, like you don't have much job opportunities, and somebody says, hey, hop on this license, we'll give you $250,000. Like that guy's probably never seen that amount in one shot, like his whole life. And so for him, that seems very equitable. But
right.
When the law says that you're supposed to own 49% of the business and not sell out the equity in that over 10 years, then you realize that $250,000 is like a drop in the bucket towards what the real,
why they offered to pay $250,000.
Exactly. And so, like, there are some people that are fully taking advantage of that. There's other people that just don't get it. It's when I talk about entitlement, I talk about, right. I kind of talk about it like drug, like a drug disease, like you're a drug addict. So if you're in it, you can't see out of it. If you're outside of it, you can't see in it. So I try to explain things. If somebody is willing to sit down and listen, right, then then they're they're less likely to be entitled in a way that they're walking in a way that they're seeing that they understand what the challenges are and they're willing to meet that person in the middle. And so that's what, we talked about this before about finding that partner and then saying, what is it that you need? What is it that you're looking for? As opposed to saying, hey, I'm going to do this and this and this. Like, what is it that you want out of this? And then what are your challenges and how can we meet in the middle? How can we help you reach that? That's an equitable partnership, right? But just coming in and saying, oh, this is what we're going to do, and not giving them the full scope of what the opportunity is, what your resources are, what you're, offering, that's not equitable.
Right. Like, I mean, I think even just, an example that comes to mind, even just between, Spark and Sanctuary was, I think we ended up, we had to make a large order, a large percent of your product, just because it was like, look, and it wasn't necessarily a threat. And that's where I see it as equitable of like, you have to sacrifice by not selling to as many of clubs, and that's the choice you're making. But then we're saying, but look, we'll like invest in you and we'll do email blasts and we'll plug it, but we need to have enough to make it worth us doing all these plugging and putting all this energy in. So that's right. Like, it's just like, look, if you want to go down, if you want to play ball, that's fine, but we need you to take your ball over here and play with us, as opposed to,
And like, understanding what the challenges were. For Sanctuary Farms, that was easier to do. We produce our own product. For a smaller, equity brand, that might not be as easy to do, right? And so ultimately being flexible enough to adjust how you operate within those brands, not saying like putting a cookie cutter stamp, look, if you can't provide this, this, and this, then you can't be on our shelf space, right? But just being flexible enough to, again, meet that person in the middle where they are. Like, okay, well, we have 5 stores. Can you afford to put half a pound in each store? Okay, let's start there, and then let's work up to where like we'd like to be, right? Not saying there should be a minimum or a maximum, right? Like just being flexible. That's what I talk to a lot of retailers. They ask me, like, how can we support? Well, just be flexible enough to know that, right, that I might not be able to drop off 50 samples, right? Where some, Papa and Barkley might be able to, or, you know what I mean? Like understanding that our challenges are different. I might not be able to go below $14 a unit where, some Astor Farms can go to 10, right? Sure. They have an acre. I have 10,000 square feet. It's not fair to compare us, in terms of what our resources.
Yeah, it's just a different game. It's just a different game.
And for us, as long as the quality is there, like how I measure it is, I'm not going to sell you some $10 weed for $13. Like, just compare my $13 weed against everybody else's $13 weed, and then you tell me, is it worth it, right? That's all we're asking
That's
for.
The game.
Like, right. It's, I've had some dispensaries where the gross margin was everything. And because they didn't have, because everybody else is charging 11 and I'm charging 13. They're like, well, I don't know. There's not enough gross margin. I'm like, compare my stuff against the $11 thing. Like let the consumer decide. They're one of your best selling products and the customer is asking for it and they feel value in that, then give it to them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think also, I mean, people are becoming more conscientious. There's absolutely a more conscientious consumer. And I think that people are aware. And so, it's just, and again, it's just giving the option to customers who say, okay, and it's like we are not an equity company, right? Spark, that's just not a part of our DNA. We have our own trials and tribulations that we've been through that we're, you know, and obviously we're an old school operator, but we are not an equity company. But you know, one of the things that personally, that like the reason I like working in cannabis is that unlike any other industry, there is this energy to at least try to right the wrong of the drug war and try to create equitable opportunities. And like tech didn't do that. You know, Google wasn't like, hey, we got to hire a chief diversity officer like in 2005 when they started.
Let's dominate. That's all.
It was just like, dominate. Yeah. And so at least, but so that's what keeps me like hyped on working on campus, is at least there's an effort. But then in order for that effort to manifest, it requires like you can't just sweep the deck once, you know, because then the leaves fall again and you got to sweep it again the next day. So it requires a constant like reminder that like we're trying to build this industry in a way that is equitable and that that, you know, but like you said, it's not reparations. That's not what we're in the business of. We're not in the business of handing out checks, but right. Just if you're choosing who to do business with, right. Why not support some people who, you know, even the fact that maybe you ask yourself why you aren't already doing business with more equity brands, and let that be a little question to reflect on. Right.
Like take it from, as an example, right? Take it from cookies. They're a multinational. They're international now, and the whole reason why they are where they are is because our community supported them, right? Like Berner utilized the rap community. That's communities of colors. He utilized the marketing and our community's fascination with that to build that. Great. I'm not talking down on it. Like I appreciate what he did because that shows the example of what our communities do to support businesses and what the buying power is in those communities, right? And so that's what the equity trade certification is about, is like we're in this new environment. Well, it's not new. It's an environment. You see what's going on around the nation right now with race relations and with just really people just being fed up with the way things were and wanting to change them to a new way of doing business with purpose, right? Like having some kind of purpose behind what we do and getting away from this corporate mindset that has led us to where we are with poisoned water and environment and earth and food and every healthcare, right? Like, yeah. It's gotten poisoned, so we have to have a stake in investing in those things that are going to help us to get to a place where we have a healthy community. And part of that is equal access. That's what the equity trade certification is about. It's about identifying, just like fair trade, where people want to know where their products are coming from. They want to know where their money is going to. And so now they have a way to be able to realistically know that their money is going back to these communities that have been disproportionately impacted. Like, that is a big part of the ethos. And if you make that part of your business mindset and how you do business, like I tell everybody, I told this, I told, you know, all the big companies that started bringing on equity brands, I said, listen, if you support our community, watch how our community supports you. Watch how much return customer and how much loyalty you get from that community. So this is like one of those give relationships. But those people that aren't listening, their bottom lines are hurting, and you're seeing that corporate. You saw what happened to MedMen. How did that corporate, like, very hermetic environment serve them? It did not, because this plant comes from nature. This is a nurturing plant, and it nurtures everybody the same. And so if you're not in the spirit of that with everything that you do, it's not going to nurture you, and that includes your bottom line.
No, totally. And I think that's so real. And there's such like a push, for the like new consumer. And I do think that the new consumer, the modern consumer, the one who wants low dose, edibles and pretty packaging and all these things, I very much so think that they exist and they're out there. But the people who are smoking the most cannabis are not new consumers.
No, that's your return customer. Like, yes, there is this large group of folks, mostly boomers, and that are coming back to this plant and fighting back the propaganda that was served to their generations for so many years, right? That's having them slowly but surely coming back. But like you said, your everyday customers, your everyday return customers are going to be consumers that have been consuming this, and they don't care what the label is on it. They care what's inside that jar or inside, that top floor edible, how it affects them. That's what they care about. And if you're not focusing on that, then you can't build that brand. Like, yeah, they're going to come buy it once, but then if they don't get the effect that they want out of it, that's it. And you can't build no retail business. You can't build your brand off of new customers and new consumers. Like, yes, we need to get those, but you should be focusing on your everyday consumers that need that product and what are the results that they're trying to get out of it.
Yep. No, I'm totally with you. So what is the status of this equity trade certification, and what is this little process that you've created, and are the stamps in the wild right now? Are they coming soon? What is this?
So we have 10 to 11 brands signed up already. Most of them are already on their packaging. You can find the Equity Trade Certification logo on SF Roots, DCCX, James Henry, KGB.
Cool.
Gift of Doja, like all these brands will have the Equity Trade certified identifier on it, so they're actually in the marketplace.
Is it literally just a sticker?
It is, yeah. So it's
like, is that like logo. I'm just saying there will be there's like a physical sticker that you can see, just like the organic or
yes.
Like I was saying, kosher, whatever. There's a little sticker.
Yeah. So there is a physical logo. It's an Equity Trade logo that you will see on products coming out.
Are we going to see one live here?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if you can see. So this is the logo there, Equity Trade logo. You'll see that on many products. So like you can see it here on the SF Roots. This is their Al Ajo, their new Al Ajo OG release, and you can see it on a lot of products. So like you'll actually get that Equity Trade logo. So definitely we're already in the mode of having people go out and ask for, hey, do you have Equity Trade products? So how the program works is, like I said, we have that logo on 11 brands right now, with another 10 in the pipeline to start signing up and building up. We will be releasing the website within the next couple weeks. Will be the launch of the website. We have an article coming out in MG Magazine and a few other media locations kind of talking about it. So the Equity Trade certification, number one, it certifies equity products. So we're certifying that these products are coming from those communities impacted disproportionately by the war on drugs. We have a specific process to identify those brands, and we vet them before and bring them in, and then we allow them to utilize the logo on their label. And then what is tied into that is the Equity Trade allyship. So the allies are people like yourself. I've been talking to Michael about you guys signing on. He already said he's in, so I'm going to get you guys signed on. Basically, for allies, we have a lot of retailers that have committed to shelf space. So they commit to 20 to 40% shelf space commitment for these Equity Trade products. In some cases, they commit to other resources like mentorship, helping them, utilizing some of their resources for compliance or marketing or some of these other technical assistant resources that these brands need to kind of get to the point where they can scale up. And then it's not just retailers that are allies. We have cultivators that have committed to a certain percentage of their crops to be sourced to equity trade brands. So they, instead of us having to compete with a bunch of larger distributors that are sourcing all these good products, these few farms are committing to 10 to 20 pounds per crop to source directly to equity brands. Same with manufacturers. So we're creating this ecosystem of resources, retailers, manufacturers, cultivators, and brands to allow people to identify who our allies are and who the businesses are within this structure.
Awesome.
The next step of that is we partnered in with Chroma.io, who has created a blockchain identifier that will 100% certify that product. So like eventually you'll be able to scan it with your phone. It will bring up the equity trade logo. It will show that it is a certified and not a copy, or somebody just threw it on their product. Like the only way they'll get that is through us. And then it also shows the supply chain. It will show the cultivator, manufacturer, distributor. It'll show the retail locations that product exists in. And then on the website, we're going to have that whole supply chain. So like it's extra marketing for retailers. We'll have identifiers and things for retailers. For the bud tenders, we have shirts that say asking about equity trade. And a lot of things that help the retailers to market that, and we'll market within our networks. But it's really trying to create this ecosystem of products and allies that are trying to do business with purpose, really want to make sure that their money is going back to those people that they feel allegiance with and alliance with.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's super real. And I mean, you're so cool, Ramon. I don't even know. Yeah, man, I love the energy, and I just love, and it requires, a constant push. And I just, I feel like your hustle is always evolving. I giggled a little bit because I was just like, Ramon is always plugging when you were like, SF Roots, this is Al Ajo. I was like, man, you work with Ramon. Ramon is always plugging so hard.
I support my folks, and you continue to support me. I'm going to continue to support you. And if your intent is true, then that's all I'm going to do is build that community. And that's what we're doing right now with the local equity distribution. We've been able to combine the resources of 5 different equity brands and just kind of centralize our distribution process so that we can kind of save some money, lower overhead, do some, buying and selling together, so we reduce the amount of overhead that we're doing so we can keep those margins and scale this up. Ultimately, it's going to take us utilizing each other's resources to build up to the point where, like we're competing against people that have, $50 to $100 million in operational costs, where we started this distro with less than $10,000. So, it's just like
it's
not going grind.
Exactly. And so that's where I just, I love it. Just, I guess, to summarize, I feel like we've talked, A, there has to be an intention, B, be flexible, because like you said, people are operating, it's just completely different games of the depth of pockets and whatnot. Right. And then, it sounds like, tap into this network of the equity trade, whether, as an ally, if possible, or, for brands, anyone listening, obviously hit up Ramon. I would say anyone who watches this should hit up Ramon. It's a worthwhile process.
Even if I can, I'll plug you into somebody you can. Like, it's about building that. We have to do business with intent. Like, we have to swing the pendulum back the other way. The pendulum has been swept in the way of the few having a lot and a lot having very little. And so we have to swing that the other way. It's just like when we talk about any other, women or LGBTQ, like all these things, that there have been so much systemic oppression for so long that we have to absolutely go completely the opposite way and put a gang of resources into making sure that those folks are represented. And that takes personal sacrifice. That takes, sacrifice on both sides. Like, that takes sacrifice on my side to deal with the PTSD and try to figure out, sit down and find out who our allies are, because we can't do it without folks like you guys and Spark supporting that, and so, like, really being able to sit down and deal with some of my own PTSD, to sit down with folks that might look corporate, but just figuring out who those folks are and who they aren't. And like, again, I appreciate you guys for, really walking the walk. Like, you guys made a commitment and you continue to make that commitment. It wasn't like a one-time thing. There's other people in this industry that reached out and said, oh yeah, we're going to buy your product. They ordered once and they never again ordered. And so,
sure. Yeah, I mean, it requires, amplifying voices that normally don't get the stage. And that's why, honestly, like, that's why when you said, today was Indigenous Peoples Day, when we were scheduling this, and I was like, cool, let's make a point of it. And I think that, although it is work, I'm sure you were already working anyways, but now at least part of the work done on Indigenous Peoples Day was creating space and amplifying voices, and trying to, make the
quick note on that
loud voice.
Just a quick note on that. And Roberto Garcia, that's my stepfather who raised me, Native American. He was part of the group that organized the Resistance 500 back in the early 90s at Berkeley, that actually did the push to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day in Berkeley and Nevada County. And then from there, it spread out to other counties, other states. And so definitely want to honor that and just tell people to honor and support the history of those people that came before us.
Super real. Amen to that. Well, I think that is a great place to wrap up this conversation. Always appreciate talking with you. Good to see your face. I feel like we've talked on the phone mostly recently. So it's good to see you.
I know, man. It'll be good to get back in person and be able to do that.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I miss the community. So once again, I appreciate you for giving me the platform to even listen. I've been talking about this stuff for a long time, and only recently given the platform to actually, have people here. And so I definitely appreciate that. You've always supported us, and I appreciate you, sir.
Back at you, my friend. Well, right on, Ramon. It's been great, and thank you to Growth from Home for hosting this conversation and giving both of us the platform.
I appreciate all you guys. Thank you. Thanks.